Hello, friends. Thanks for joining us today on this E2 podcast and for taking your time to listen to some of my insights that I have gained over the years on E2 visas for foreign investors that are wishing to come to the U.S. to develop and direct their businesses. So first of all, my name is Verdin. I am a immigration lawyer based out of Dallas, Texas. I am board certified by the Texas Board of Legal Specialization in the area of immigration law. And it's been my pleasure to be working in immigration law and being a licensed attorney for over 24 years, getting close to 25 years now. And one of my areas of emphasis, or one of my focus areas, is this area of E2 visas. And in particular, I handle an abundant number of real estate related concepts and ventures for foreign investors involved in the real estate space. And we have done many cases involving different real estate strategies. I recall in my earlier days in practice that individuals would come to me exploring this possibility of an E2 visa and being turned off by the notion that they couldn't invest in real estate because of the nature of the project. And I quickly realized that there was a lot of myth and urban legend around the real estate concepts. And I took it upon myself to really do a lot of research in this area and push back on some of these misconceptions and false notions and really have seen a wonderful development, a robust development in real estate investment for E2 visas over the years. So because E2 visas in the real estate industry are varied in that there are many types of strategies. The focus of this podcast today will be to focus on house flipping or flipping. It's a commonly used name for this strategy where an investor acquires a property, adds value to the property, and then divests the property or sells the property for a profit. So this strategy, usually shorter term holds, the amount of time that an investor holds can vary from a few months to several years. But in most cases, it's an issue of a few months while the remodeling, the redesigning of certain aspects of the property are completed and then putting the house up for sale in the market. So I think it's also important to discuss just a very important disclaimer in that every investor, every foreign national applicant for E2 visas has different circumstances, different facts that could impact the analysis for the E2 visa. So it's very important that those of you who are interested in pursuing the E2 visa, that you take the time to actually consult with experienced, competent immigration counsel to explain your particular facts and then see if there are any issues or any alarms that need to be considered before diving into the E2 visa. So the purpose of this podcast is just to give a roadmap, to give you an overview of a typical case. Now, I'll be giving some examples of successful stories, but again, remember, one or two facts of variance can totally alter the outcome. So it's very important that you discuss your particulars with experienced immigration counsel. Okay, well, let's get into the topic then. So E2 visas for real estate investors involved in the house flipping strategy. All right, so we'll take it step by step, and I think the most critical first fundamental step will be to assess if you possess the nationality of a treaty country. So not all countries qualify for an E2 visa. You have to be a national or possess a passport of a country that has a pre-existing treaty with the United States. Some countries have treaties for E2s and others do not. So it's important to go determine this very first step before you invest a lot of time and effort and money on pursuing an E2 visa if you're not even a citizen of a country that has a treaty. So many countries do, but many don't. So you do have to confirm that initial first step. And sometimes I have seen individuals very interested in the E2 visa that they will go to the extent of acquiring another nationality before they that does qualify for the E2 visa and pursue it kind of a long-term strategy before they enter the United States. But there are some other concerns with that, and it's not really within the scope of this. But if those are your facts, then you have to discuss that particular strategy. So again, step one, do you have the nationality of a treaty country? And State Department website has great information on the list of E2 treaty countries. All right, step number two for those individuals that are interested in this E2 through a flipping strategy would be to organize your legal entity in the United States. So this means that you would form a legal entity, ideally in the state where you wish to operate. You have to remember this point about the U.S. legal system. The way the U.S. government is set up and through our Constitution, we have many states. We have 50 states in the United States, and each state controls its laws as to corporations. So you have to organize your entity in the state that you wish to operate. Now, if you wish to operate in a state where you don't organize, it's still possible to do that, but sometimes you have to go through some additional steps to notify the relevant state agencies that you're going to be doing business in that state. Again, the general recommendation is to organize where you want to operate, but there are some there are possibilities to operate in other states, even if you're organized, for example, in Texas. If you set up your LLC, your limited liability company or corporation, then you could acquire real estate under that entity or register yourself in a different state as operating as a foreign entity. All right, so those are some of the requirements. Now, you have to remember also that you have to own, as the foreign investor, you have to own at least 50% of the legal entity. So if you're the sole investor, you can own 100% of the entity to qualify, or let's say you have a partner, you can't dilute your portion. If you want to qualify for the E2 visa, you can't dilute it below 50%. So you could have a partner, but you have to maintain at least 50%. So it's possible that you maintain, like you have 100%, 99, 90, 80, 75, all the way, but no lower than 50%. So once you set up your company, then the next step would be to obtain a federal employer identification number. This is done online if your partner has a social security number or whether you have a social security number. If you don't have a social security number, then you can request a federal employer identification number from directly from the Internal Revenue Service, and you must request that and file for it, and the IRS will send you a federal employer identification number. You'll need that number to set up your banking, your accounts through a bank underneath the corporation. So first step is set up the company. Second step is obtain the federal employer identification number. Third step would be to open up your corporate bank account with the financial institution of your choosing. Ideally, you want to work with a bank or a financial institution that has experience in working with foreign nationals and that they have knowledge of those transactions. Most bigger banks will have no issue with that. Okay, the next step is really important. So The next step is to transfer your capital that you intend to invest from, if you're the personal investor, you want to transfer that from a personal account. You want to have legal possession and control of your funds. And remember that the US government is going to be very curious as to the source of your investment. We always have to show documentation to prove up the legality, to prove that you obtained those funds through legal means, either through your earnings, savings, through a gift, through an inheritance, through the sale of property or business. So through a gift, through a loan, there's different ways to obtain capital, but as long as you have the documentation to prove up that it was legally obtained, then you are good to go. It's going to be acceptable for the US government. So you want to channel your investment funds through your personal account if you, the individual, will be the investor. Now, if you have a foreign corporation and the foreign corporation is going to own the US corporation, well, then the money can be routed through the foreign corporation. Okay, but in most cases, most people choose to invest in an individual capacity. So I highly recommend that they channel investment funds through a personal account. All right, so once your funds are in your personal account, then you transfer them to the corporate account. I recommend 1 or 2 big transfers from your personal account to the corporate account. This is less paperwork, less confusing to the government adjudication officer. Once the money is in the corporate account, then from here you will acquire your real estate. All right, now let's talk about the types of real estate that are single family. I've seen clients acquire your traditional single family residence property. I've seen clients acquire condos, which is, many of you are familiar with the condominium concept. I've seen clients acquire mobile homes, like a kind of a mobile home, sometimes referred to as a trailer, but those are also, people reside in those and people can acquire those under the corporation. So that gives you a sense of the magnitude. So if you have a condo or a mobile home, you're going to have a lower price point there. If you have single family residence, depending on the market that you invest. And remember, in the US, and I'm sure in many countries around the world, that the real estate is determined by the local market. So you really have to research your local market conditions to figure out the price points that you're going to be looking at for the purchase of the properties. It's very important to work with experienced real estate agents in the US that have knowledge of local market conditions. Very, very important for you to work with with a experienced real estate agent. All right. So I do recommend that if we are going to present a case that you are in the flipping business, that your strategy is to acquire undervalued properties and that you are adding value to them through remodeling and then selling them for profit, my recommendation, the way I have presented cases before, is I try to present at least 2 properties that have been acquired, and that's how, at a minimum, I would say you try to get experience with 2 properties, and maybe one of them is on the market already for sale, so that you show that you're already engaged in this strategy. So aim for at least 2 acquisitions before you apply. If you just do one, the government might be skeptical of your intent. But I think what I've seen in my clients, I've seen at least 2, and that strategy has worked in the past. And I've seen clients with mini portfolio, they've had a lot of success before they apply. But I would say at a minimum, aim for 2 properties. Now, one of the requirements to show all of the fundamentals for an E2 visa is to show that the business is real and operating. Now, here is where I think in the past there have been misconceptions about the E2 with real estate, in that the assumption was that real estate holdings were passive. Now, you can understand why there has been that misconception. because a real estate it's not your traditional business where you have customers and you have a lot of vendors and you got your cash flow coming in on a regular basis. Now, real estate investment is different. Real estate investing is different, but it surely is real and operating, especially if you have a track record of success. It takes work to be successful, to make money in the real estate strategy of flipping homes for profit. For those of you who have experience with this strategy, let me just give you a sense of the type of active work that is involved in the flipping strategy. For starters, as I said earlier, market conditions vary from market to market, from locale to locale, location to location. Conditions can vary a lot. So just imagine the amount of research that is required to do your due diligence as to where you're going to acquire your properties, where the ideal market conditions lie, so that you can make the best strategic move for the acquisition. Then the planning and the design of the remodel, that takes work. It takes creativity. It takes a sense of knowing what would be the most attractive for a resale. So the planning of the project and the design of the project can consume a lot of work. This is activity. This is something that is not passive. Third, another aspect of this business strategy that you can prove up that it's real and operating and not passive is that it requires a lot of budgeting. So think of all the costs associated with the procurement of supplies and construction materials and the labor cost and the materials and the labor cost and the commissions and some of the ancillary costs like I already said, insurance or broker's fees or legal fees. There's a lot of budgeting that it has to be very detailed. And again, it's time consuming and it takes a lot of expertise and budgeting to do it right. So this is financial analysis. Again, this is not passive activity. This is active activity. Now, another aspect to show real and operating is, as I said earlier, hiring contractors. Now, the expectation is that you are not personally hammering in nails. That would be hilarious for most of us. I can't do that very well. But you certainly can hire expert or experienced contractors to do the work for you. Now, so locating and screening the right contractors is going to take work. Managing the contractors is going to take work, a lot of work. You have to keep people on schedule. You have to account for delays and delivery of supplies, weather conditions. There's a lot of moving parts to manage the labor force to be able to accomplish the remodel construction project. And the procurement of the supply sometimes can be done directly by the foreign investor, which will be a lot of work there. Or if you're subcontracting and you're putting that on the contractors, well then the procurement aspect of the supplies is something that's important to consider in your budgeting. As you can see, these are all aspects of a real estate flipping strategy that require a lot of energy, a lot of real and operating activity that, if explained clearly to the government, you can get outside of the passive nature of what people used to think was a passive investment. But in my experience, I've seen the government clearly understand that it is not passive. Okay, move on to another step here for E2 visas. To qualify for an E2 visa, the investor applicant must show that the investment is not marginal. What does that mean? Well, you have to show that the business has the capacity to generate more than sufficient income to support the investor and his or her family, that the investment is not de minimis, so that the business has no ability to make sufficient money. So you have to show that it has the ability to make sufficient money. Now, for new businesses, sometimes this is hard because you're barely starting off. Now, you have to project out 5 years, make your case through a business plan that you will be profitable and that you will generate sufficient revenue for not just yourself, but remember you're using contractors, so you're going to provide economic opportunity to other service providers, for example, handymen, electricians, plumbers, landscapers, painters, roofers. Now, these are all individuals involved in the construction industry that you're going to be providing economic benefit to them. So these payments to the contractors in the form of checks, or if it's the whole year, you'll have 1099 documents, it's a yearly form to substantiate the amount of money you pay to a contractor. So make sure you keep all those 1099s really well organized, or any canceled checks or contracts with these independent contractors. Well, this will satisfy this marginality issue that I'm referring to. All right. So in most cases, the government has not pushed back on that issue by showing of 1099s. I have many clients that have no direct employees that have been successful in winning E2 visas by using indirect employees, not necessarily direct employees. Now, if you have an assistant or you have a manager as an employee, wonderful, but it is certainly not a requirement. Especially not in the beginning, it's not a requirement. Now, another requirement for E2 visas is this aspect of showing that the investor applicant is coming to the U.S. solely for the purpose of developing and directing a business. That's the intent behind the E2 visa. Well, again, in this business, you better separate yourself from the frontline production of the service, because you have to be directing others. So who are you directing in this case? As I mentioned earlier, the direction involves directing contractors, directing agents, directing service providers to deliver and produce on time, on a schedule. Essentially, you're a project manager, making sure everything is done right. You're directing others, and you're developing this business by making your property as attractive as possible so that you can resell it for profit. So that's a lot, right? I've certainly, the amount of paperwork involved to get these E2 treaties, visas through the real estate flipping strategy can sometimes be overwhelming, but we have to be very strategic in what documents we select, because there are many times the consulates force us to submit only a set number of pages, like 100 pages or 80 pages or 70 pages. We have to limit the number of pages to prove the evidence to meet all the requirements. Okay, well, those in a nutshell, those are the requirements for the E2 visa for a flipping strategy. Remember, there are some cons to this strategy. Not everything is rosy and always without any risk, without any challenges. Remember, like any other investment, real estate investment is subject to the forces of the market. Sometimes, unexpectedly, the market conditions change, and you could find yourself in a situation where you are having trouble unloading your property. So you have to account for that risk, and you should have the financial resources to bear that risk and ride that market out. Now, on the other side of that, you have a physical fixed asset that is physical. You can touch it, you can smell it, you know where it's at, you can see it, and eventually, in most cases, those can be unloaded. So those cons can be mitigated with enough time, but you should know that market conditions do change. Markets can go up and down. So again, you should seek the assistance of local real estate agents to guide you in the market conditions that you may be aware of them, or you may not be aware of them. So you should do your due diligence on the local market conditions. And if you don't have any experience with real estate, it's not as easy as it seems. Sometimes it seems very sexy, very glorious to be involved with real estate investing, but It requires a lot of market research, a lot of budgeting knowledge, a lot of project management skills. And if you're not ready to do that, this might not be the best strategy. There are other strategies for E2 visas, but this particular house flipping strategy may not be the ideal one. If you have experience in the industry, wonderful. You can usually duplicate that experience and use it here in the US. Again, studying the local market conditions will be essential. All right. Well, I really hope that you found this useful. I certainly enjoy working with my real estate investors to get the E2 visas. It is always encouraging to see foreign investors do something that they're passionate about to both make money and to get the E2 visa and all the benefits associated with that. And I hope, again, that you found it helpful. And always seek immigration counsel before you commit yourself to this strategy. And I think that by seeking the help of an experienced immigration lawyer, it will make the journey towards the E2 visa a lot more pleasant, and at least you are going into it with eyes wide open. All right, well, best wishes to you. Certainly it's been a pleasure. Reach out if you do have any questions. Good day to you.